Welcome back, everybody. Kidding.
What up, YouTube?
We're not that high energy, are we?
I'm not.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your hosts, Tyler and Tristan. TxT Anime Hour. What's up?
Is that how we're gonna start everything going forward?
Yeah, we play with it. I have no idea.
You left out the what up,
I'm
YouTube, and don't forget to smash that like button.
which would be great.
Is that? I feel like even sarcastically that wouldn't be our brand.
No, not at all. You like if you want to like, but that's not the brand.
No.
But we are Tristan and Tyler, and we are happy to have you here, and we are on the TxT Anime Hour right meow.
Yeah. You know what? I'll start us off with what our topic is today.
That sounds good.
And I'm going to start it off the best way I can. Konya wa nihongo benkyou shimasu.
Holy moly.
Hi.
That was impressive.
For anybody who's curious, that reads, tonight I will study Japanese.
That is phenomenal, and it just sounded really good to my untrained ear, at least. Really flowy. Like, we're going to talk about it here today, but you've been working way harder than me at studying Japanese, and I am, like, blown away at that. So what are we talking about then today?
Technically, the main point of the conversation today will be your adventure in Japan. And I can't really relate too much with that one. I have like a bunch of weird third-hand knowledge about what's going on there and like what's popular in the stores that are there and what have you. But we will also attempt to relay my never-ending Japanese study into your adventures.
Yeah, that's sick. I would almost flip that on its head in that we don't have to talk about visiting Japan as much as we talk about studying Japan. Like, I definitely have a lot more questions around, like a lot more to say and questions regarding studying Japanese than even talking about Japan. But it was an incredible visit. So, to get part of that out of the way, it was, when was that? May of 2023?
Yeah, you guys went somewhere in the summertime.
Yeah. It was a huge chunk of May, like second half of May, that we went. And I won't go on and on about it, but it was definitely, growing up a weeb, you want to go to Japan. It's just, I can remember being 11 or 12 and being like, if you could go anywhere, where would it be? And that's where, like that. I can remember, I don't even know what the assignment was in grade 6, but I can remember wanting to go to Japan vividly in grade 6 when asked on more than one occasion. Because like that was like the core of my childhood at that time was anime. And I just thought Japanese culture seemed cool and going to Japan seemed cool. And I was a little kid. It was certainly more about the anime and manga at that time, but and martial arts as well. Actually, yeah. I have a background in martial arts, and I always wanted to go, and that's actually on my list of things to do when I get back, or when I do get to go back. But martial arts study over there would be kind of just a cool box to check, right? It'd just be neat to take a few lessons of something, whether it's like karate or judo is one that I think would be really cool, or even, and here comes some weebery, but I also thought it'd be really cool to do some sort of kenjutsu practice over there, like actually get to go do kendo or iaido or something with wooden swords. I think that would be really just fun. Like, it would just be a fun experience, right?
Yeah.
And that actually ties really well into one of the things preventing me from doing that, which is that's one of those things that knowing a little bit more Japanese would make me a lot more comfortable with that experience. Like, when I was there, you could get by with English quite well, actually.
I would imagine so, yeah.
And maybe we should dip into that for a second. But that was that was really neat. Was that Japanese wasn't totally a requirement. We used the bit of Japanese that I know, which was very fun. I'll get into that in a second. We used Google Translate, both passively to just translate like signs and menus and stuff like that, and then actively to actually converse a couple times with people. We would do the whole
nice.
like type into that was really cool. It was actually a Japanese local who did that to us first, and I was like, whoa, that worked really well. I'm going to keep that in my back pocket for if we need to converse with somebody a little bit more accurately, we can use that. Essentially what happened was we were fussing around with a ramen. They have vending machines that this isn't even a vending machine. So we pop into this little ramen shop, and it's like your typical like tiny, I forget the word for it, but it's like a very small, narrow restaurant where there's just one bar, essentially, right? And right inside the door, there's like what looks like a little vending machine, but what it is you put your money into it and you make your menu selection via the buttons on the front. And then what it spits out is a ticket that you give to the guy on the other side of the bar, and then he makes the food, whatever's on the ticket, which is a very neat system because you just go in. It's kind of like going into a McDonald's here now that has the little like touch screen to like order your food via the touch screen. Yeah, this is like a more regressed version of that, where it's, you're pressing buttons and it's spitting out the tickets. This was the first time we had seen that. We had not noticed that in any other restaurant up to this point. We'd been in Japan for, I don't know, probably a week at this point, or maybe a little less, but we hadn't seen this yet. And so we're just like looking at it, bumping around, and the guy doesn't speak a word of English. And he was super patient with us, but he just kind of like showed us how to use it as best he can with gestures and what little English he had, which was, I was super grateful. Anyway, we get the tickets, we give them to him. He gives us like one of the best bowls of ramen that I had across the whole trip. It had to be like top 3 because we had a lot of ramen when we were there. That was like that was the thing that we found ourselves defaulting to try everywhere, because we could eat anything, but we're like, I want to know what their ramen's like here and here and here. And so anyway, certainly a top 3, if not my favorite bowl that I had there. And anyway, as we're eating, this was like close to their closing time, I realized, and we were the only customers in there. And so we were trying to enjoy our food, but we were like hustling a little bit. And I think that came across to this man, because what he did is I saw him talk into his phone, and then he brings it over to me and holds it in front. And you can see he had used like Google Translate or Apple Translate or whatever to basically say, hey, we're just cleaning up, but please take the time to enjoy the food.
Oh, that's so cute.
It was so cool. I was just so stoked. I was like, and so I did the same with my phone. My phone. I'm just like, how do I tell this guy that this is the best bowl? Because up to this point, I'm just like, this is the best bowl of ramen that I've had since, and I think that's what I said to him. I said, this is the best meal I've had since coming to Japan. And he was pumped. And so that was my first experience using Google Translate to actually have a mini conversation. And then we kept that in our back pocket for a couple other things that happened later on. And so, yeah, so that's Google Translate was really good for that. Really, really good for reading signs and menus. Like it came in handy there, even though it's not perfect. It gives you enough to like figure things out. And then the very last piece was, I guess, tying back to the little bit of Japanese that I know. Not only was I trying to use it to say this or that, like obviously we were saying, excuse me and thank you and, please, and using manners and things. But one of the things that I really wanted to say in this episode is that, and this is going to segue into our talking about Duolingo, is what I found very useful were manners, obviously, and being able to kind of read and recognize hiragana and katakana.
Yeah, that's a big thing I notice when I watch my walking videos. Is I'll see a sign and I take a moment to pause and read it out. I'm like, oh, I know what that place is potentially.
That is so cool, and that's exactly what it is. You're on the bus, or you're at a station, or you're looking at a sign, and if you can recognize at least like most of hiragana and katakana, then even if you don't know kanji, you can fumble your way through figuring out, and this is how I like to word it to people. It allows you, it gives you something to Google. Even if I don't know the word that I just read out loud, I at least can now Google that without having to, Google Translate can work, but without having to use Google Translate to try to scan a sign or whatever, I can quickly read a word and be like, okay, I can sound out phonetically this word, which means that I can type it into a search engine and find out what the heck it means. So, or just know what it means, like to your point, right? Like you may just have that vocabulary word and be like, oh, this sign means this, cool. And so, yeah, that was kind of my experience with English to Japanese. Is I found that people were, they really, and I had heard this in advance, but it really came through when I was there. People enjoy the opportunity to try to speak English. Mm-hmm. And they love it when you take the opportunity to try to speak Japanese. Is my, gross generalization of my experience and what I read online before going. They aligned. It was basically like, hey, if I finish, what was one of the first things we did, and it was so genuine. We had it was another bowl of ramen. This was the first one actually at the start of the trip. This was the first one we had while over there. And I had said to the waiter had come by to ask how things were going or to just check in or whatever, and I had said oishii, and he loved it. He loved it, and then my partner was like what did you say? And I'm like, I said oishii, and it means delicious. It means that it was tasty. And she loved that. And so when we went up to pay at the end, she said it as well, kind of thing. And it was another one of those cool, genuine interactions where that was really fun for the person. And there was more than one person who just loved the chance to try to communicate with us in English, and then for us to try to speak Japanese back in various situations. Like there was another restaurant where we had ordered some sushi this time, and some tea, and I'd have to look back at my notes to remember what the conversation was exactly, but it was cool because I had ordered mostly in Japanese to a degree, and I had said something a certain way. I think I had looked it up while sitting there, and I had said something in a certain way, and the waiter was like, he understood what I said, which was really satisfying, but he's like, what you would actually say is this. And gosh, that would have been a perfect thing for me to have fresh in my mind for this podcast episode, but I can't remember what it actually was, man. I'll have to rack my brain, but it was really cool because it was that openness of like, okay, I'm going to speak English when I need to. We're going to try a few things. We're going to try to have the courage and boldness to try to say a few things here and there. And then have like low ego so that, if this man standing in front of me kind of chuckles and says, this is how we would say it, you just take that as a cool, fun learning opportunity that you wouldn't have had if you didn't try, right? So yeah, that was really cool. But just to sum up that little segment, is my experience when it came to the language was knowing manners, knowing how to recognize, this is like knowing manners, knowing some hiragana, katakana. Third tier would be if you can recognize a couple kanji, that can be helpful.
Yeah.
Just I actually looked up, right? Like I looked up, best kanji for travel, and I just had like a spreadsheet on my phone that I kind of studied on the plane and popped open here and there. I didn't get far enough to recognize them all. I would have liked to, like there was probably only like there's probably only like 30 or something on my list. I don't remember, but I wish I had started that as early as I'd started the hiragana katakana so that I could recognize more. Just to be able to like pick up on them when you see them at a train station or
I
or
think
whatever.
train station and hotels would probably want to be and restroom would be the biggest ones.
Totally. Yeah. I had made sure that I recognized restroom, actually. It's funny to say that. Especially the that one shows up on signs a lot in katakana, the toire shows up. Yeah, and so I made sure that I recognized that and a couple of the various kanji for it so that, you could find them when needed. But and then the last tier would be just falling back on Google Translate for a couple things and then just having the willingness to try, People always say that, it's kind of cliche, but that's exactly what it is it's like if you learn a couple things and you have an opportunity to try them, you just should, because the most you're going to get is a happy person that's like, oh my gosh, he just tried, So, so anyway, that was really cool.
That's just so cute to me that, I kind of knew this from the start because I talked about it before a little bit that I like to watch VTubers. And my favorites are always going to be the Japanese ones, and it's pretty cute to see them interact with like an English audience whenever they get the chance to.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's just so adorable. Like I was watching one on Halloween, and I had wished her happy Halloween, and she got so excited about it.
No way. And you did it in Japanese?
No, I did it in English. I just showed up. I saw everybody was saying happy Halloween, and I joined in, and she was just excited every time somebody said it.
That's so cool.
It's really adorable.
Amazing.
And that's you touched on another thing too, like just being polite and knowing your manners.
That was huge. Like I've done that everywhere that I've traveled to, and I will continue to do that. Where it's like, hey, just right, like double check some customs and manners so that you know, and those are like obviously the most important words to learn first is like please, thank you, and excuse me, or I would say those are some key ones.
Those are the big ones, but it would definitely help to say like, no, I don't speak Japanese, or Nihongo wa hanashimasen.
Nailed it. That was amazing. Every time you do that, I am impressed. So, putting a pause on the Japan trip for a second, like I want to ask you, what do I want to ask you? I was just going to top up for myself and say that part of the weebery is that I've wanted to be able to speak and read Japanese. I've just not put a ton of effort into it. In 2019, I picked up Duolingo, was playing with it for about 200 days, enjoyed that. Really glad I did that because it kind of gave me those manners and a little bit of ability to read hiragana and katakana. But then I kind of fell off the train for reasons we can get into if we want to like rate and review Duolingo during this podcast, because there's some pros and cons to it for sure. But I want to ask, like, so for me it was just wanting to flex my brain. Learning languages is good for the noggin. And then, there's always the dream of being able to use it abroad, which I got to the tiniest bit and would like to again and even more so next time. But I want to ask you, what has kind of inspired your Japanese practice? Where has it gone, and why do you keep going with it?
Honestly, at this point, I don't even know why I wanted to do it. I'm one of those guys that just has like this weird hodgepodge of skills and know-how that's literally not going to get me anywhere at any point, like video editing and audio production stuff. So I kind of lost track. I think being a generalist is cool. Being
a jack of all trades is awesome. A hodgepodge of skills is awesome.
Yeah, that's true. But it's funny, I kind of lost track of why I was learning Japanese. So at this point, like my go-to answer is, I want to play Overwatch with Japanese lobbies because those people are more polite than English lobbies.
That's awesome.
Which is true.
I can totally see it.
I'm sure I had a reason going in at the start, but now it's just kind of, I'm doing it because I'm just so knee deep at this point.
And you, on the average day, would you say that you enjoy having something to study? Like, do you enjoy the study of it on the average day? I'm sure you've got highs and lows, but is it also just something enjoyable now?
It's definitely nice to have that routine. Yeah, absolutely. Like, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. If you have something to study at least once a day, I highly recommend doing that because it keeps you. What's the word I'm trying to use? It keeps you equal parts motivated, and it definitely keeps your brain from turning into goo.
No doubt. Yeah.
At the same time, like, you can get burnt out and go, again.
Yeah, that's true. And it's so hard to strike that balance. Like, anytime I've tried to learn something, I've always been better with the like, one of my favorite aspects of Duolingo is the streak, like just trying to keep the streak alive. And that's just it's like, on most days I probably do, on many days I should say, I do feel like, again, like, I don't really want to quickly throw in a Japanese lesson here, but I feel that, just like the other things that I want to practice, like, before we got on the pod, we were talking about art, and I do not have a Duolingo streak on drawing.
Yeah.
And so guess what I don't do? I don't draw, and I don't have a Duolingo streak on the other thing that I really want to get good at this year, which is cooking. Obviously, the Duolingo streak there is eating meals.
Surviving.
But there's ways to fall back, like buying food or
Yeah.
having my partner cook food or whatever. Like, there's ways we get food in ourselves somehow, and there's ways to kind of default on that and not get anywhere in your cooking practice. And so those are two glaring examples of skills and art forms that I don't actually explore when I give myself the freedom to, you don't have to do it this day, just do it when when you're feeling it. Like, that kind of freedom results in more carefreeness, but it definitely results in a lack of discipline. And so the power of the streak there is, like, sure, on many days I'm just like, I don't want to do, like, a lesson, but I do the lesson because I don't want to see that
Same
streak
here.
break. You're right. And I think that there's a little bit of power to that, where, like, you don't break the streak. And guess what? I've actually done a Japanese lesson every day for the last 256 days. Right?
Exactly.
So I definitely feel you there. Okay, follow-up question for you is, as far as I know, well, okay, wait, let me back up. Did you ever try learning Japanese before our little foray into Duolingo 256 days ago?
Nope.
Really?
Not at all.
That's awesome. Okay. That's so cool. So, all right, 2/3 of a year ago, I fire up Duolingo again. I kind of send it your way, and you're like, all right, let's give it a go. And we start practicing Duolingo and trying to learn some Japanese. And what point did you start taking external notes for yourself?
I was probably I was already done with section 1 on Duolingo. For anybody who's curious, Duolingo will break up all their lessons into sections that have their own individual units, which is just as confusing to you as it is to me when I say that, trust me. But I was already pretty deep before I started taking notes. I was just kind of relying on the repetition, just nailing everything down into my skull. And it kind of helped for a little bit.
Yeah. That's, I was just going to say, that's all I do is have the repetition. But I know that being able to, here's a follow-up. Do you handwrite your notes? Or do you use the PC?
I use the sticky note app on the PC.
That's awesome. Nothing wrong with that. Because, there's been studies about handwriting notes being better than PC, like than typing or what have you.
Really?
But I think that's definitely, yeah, the motor learning of having to like actually write it down and the slowness of it. I think those are two key factors, right? Like we think typing and copying and pasting is so fast it means more notes, which is true, but it also means less connection with those notes, whereas having to slow down and manually handwrite things, you'd think, oh, this is so much slower, it can't be more efficient, but it gives you a more deep learning opportunity. So anyway, but that isn't to devalue the sticky notes, because notes are better than no notes.
Yeah.
Like that's where I'm at. I'm at no notes mode, and you are, typing or copying and pasting or doing whatever it is that gets you an external copy of what you're studying in Duolingo, which is no doubt going to provide you with deeper learning, more repetitions in a sense, and more like something that I'm lacking right now is kind of like structure in my mind. Like when you're writing things down, even in sticky note form, right? Like you're building this structure of how does Japanese fit together in your brain.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is like when I'm doing my lessons and it gives me one that I know I should know, I'll have like 2 or 3 or 4 words like already placed in, but then I'll go, wait, hold on, what's the actual sentence structure? And that has me going back to my notes, and like more often than not I'm actually right half the time.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So that's definitely a game changer for sure, regardless, as long as you have those notes to fall back onto.
Yeah, and going back to the structure idea, like that's such a cool thing. Like, okay, so you're doing a lesson and you hit a roadblock and you're like, I know what this is. Here's the start, here's the end, what goes in the middle, for example. And then you go back to your notes and you're like, boom, I was right. This is the piece I was missing. Mm-hmm. Throw it into the lesson. Boom, you're right. What that's also doing is when you go back and forth between your notes and the lessons like that, the notes are, you're going to remember that word better because you remember where it is in your notes. Like the notes really are organizing your mind for this. Like you'll be able to almost look up that word or phrase via the notes that are now emblazoned in your mind due to the repetition of not only rote memorization through Duolingo, which is what I'm using, but also the repetition of looking up inside your own note system, right? Your own set of notes, looking that up over and over kind of emblazons those notes in a way in your mind, and gives you more. Like hearing you throw down phrases like you've done a couple times now is way further along than I even feel, like, for sure. And I think it speaks to like the level of depth that you're putting into the practice and study of it.
Yeah, I should probably mention that on a very good day, I do 10 lessons a day.
That's on a very good day?
On a very good day. My average day, 7 lessons.
Your average day is 7 lessons?
Yeah.
That's epic. And so, okay, so to summarize Duolingo for a quick sec for people, you had already talked about sections and units. You're placed on a little map where there's little nodes that have lessons. But what I've fallen in love with Duolingo, which it didn't have in 2019, is the hiragana and katakana practice sections, which is just lessons for mastering those two writing systems, essentially. And so I've fallen into the trap of only doing hiragana and katakana lessons. Mostly, like, there's a reason for that. Like, on one hand, they're very easy to just like bang one off, quickly in a day, when I'm just trying to check the box. But also, being in Japan, I really found it helpful and found myself lacking the ability to read those. And so I wanted that to be better and better. But I think I've gotten a little stuck in, like, I know that I'll get better hiragana and katakana practice in the lessons themselves because they still write things out throughout the whole lessons. So I need to regraduate myself to continue going down the lessons. But what I was going to say is, like, on an average day for me, I'm just doing one katakana lesson which is not even a lesson compared to the lessons you're doing, because you're doing ones that actually are about phrases and have kanji and there's context, like they're actually contextual, whereas mine are basically glorified flashcards for for writing system, right? And so just for everybody, just so we can compare power levels here, I'm doing one katakana lesson a day, which is glorified 10 flashcards probably on a writing system. And here you are on an average day doing 7 of the contextual actual lessons, and 10 on a good day. That is badass, my friend.
Mainichi Nihongo o benkyou shimasu. I study Japanese every day.
Ooh. Ooh. That is so cool. Okay. Do you find yourself, 2-part question, do you find yourself taking notes on the average day?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Every time I do a lesson and it gives me something new, as soon as the first thing I'll do is I'll guess it. And, you know, it's kind of, to a degree, very easy to guess them because it's again the repetition, because you'll be seeing characters you recognize and you kind of base it off the order that you're already familiar with. Mm-hmm. And so more often than not, I'll take a guess and I'll get it right. But obviously, if I don't get it right, well, regardless, if right or wrong, I'll still take a note on it.
That's awesome. And so that leads into the second part of the question, which is, do you find yourself consulting your notes on the average day?
Oh, yes.
It sounded like that'd be an inevitable yes, based on the fact that you're writing notes every day. So,
well, it's,
wow.
I don't know if this is actually how Japanese works or if this is Duolingo, but when I think I have it right, Duolingo will tell me, no, actually it's this way. More often than not, thanks to that system, I'm kind of always second guessing myself. But again, I don't know if that's a Japanese thing or a Duolingo thing.
Yeah, we definitely bump into limitations with Duolingo. Like it's a great little gamification of language learning. And I'll say this, it's way better than it was a few years ago. Like I'm enjoying this stint infinitely more than I enjoyed it a few years ago. And I think that's just the app leveling up. That's the team adding more functions. And then specifically to the Japanese lesson, I think Japanese was somewhat newly added to the repertoire on Duolingo around 2019. So it was a pretty new lesson then. And now I feel like they've really built it out to be much more comprehensive. And I think I noticed like a little blog post on their site or something about it being more aligned with some structured way of learning Japanese, like some traditional, I'm assuming Western curriculum for Japanese learning or something like that. Or maybe not even Western. Maybe this is like somewhat in line with how they learn Japanese in primary school over there. I'm not sure, but I feel like they've structured Duolingo's lessons more and more strategically in the Japanese lesson than it would have been a few years ago, which is cool. But despite all that leveling up, we find ourselves bumping into some friction with Duolingo.
Yeah.
I don't want to turn this into like a crap on Duolingo Fest because I do overall love it. But what do you feel so far are some of the limitations present? I mean, you haven't practiced learning a language any other way that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But what do you think are some of your least favorite aspects of Duolingo, or things that are maybe messing with your learning or anything like that?
Oh, well, when I first started, it didn't have that 5-heart system in place.
Right.
That sucks a lot. So anybody who doesn't use Duolingo has essentially a health bar. And if you mess up at all during any of your lessons, it'll lower that health bar. And if you have a completely empty health bar, you have to pretty much stop studying.
Yeah. Do they do something where you can do a practice lesson or something to regain hearts? Is that right?
Yeah, you can do practice lessons to fill your hearts back up, or you can pay this fake little currency they have called gems that you earn from doing your lessons.
Yeah. And that was actually always present for for me, just because I was always on the mobile app, and even years ago, the mobile app had the health bar, but I think you study on the desktop version.
Yeah, I study
obviously.
on the browser.
Yeah, and I wonder if I feel like they're getting closer and closer to being aligned, because I think you're now getting a lot of the features that I can see in the updated app and stuff. So I'm sure they're closer and closer to being aligned now. But that health bar was always something that bugged me even years ago. And it's so funny, guys. It isn't present in the hiragana and katakana lessons that I do. I don't know if you knew that, Tristan.
That's actually another great reason to do those, is because you don't have to worry about your stupid health bar.
Yeah. There's just none. There's no impact to your health bar when you're doing those little kind of flashcard lessons. And there are kanji ones. Did you notice that as well?
I finally have the kanji now.
And I feel like you have to go deep enough into the lessons in order for it to unlock some kanji.
Yeah, I think because I was still on section 2 for the longest time, I didn't have the option for kanji, but now that I'm on section 3, yep, kanji is front and present.
That's neat. Yeah, I want to get that. That's another reason for me to go and actually do the lessons, because I like the flashcards, like the little lessons so much. I would love to be doing the same with kanji, but there's none present. I don't think I've done enough of the actual lessons to unlock that. But yeah, health is annoying. Have you done any of the free trials of Super Duolingo?
Oh yeah, it gives me one every time I hit some sort of like landmark.
Yeah. Totally. And do you find that your enjoyment of the game kind of ticks up when you're Super Duolingo-atized?
Yeah, because I don't feel like I'm getting punished for like messing something up.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Like anytime I've done a trial, I've been like, these jerks, they've got such a good app, and it's a great model. Like, I'm not gonna crap on anybody for monetizing. I think that I think it's neat that they have an app that does genuinely get better with the paid version, because I do find it to be more fun when I'm doing a super trial, and I could see myself paying for it in the future. But there are some like it is a little bit of a bummer when you're dealing with a health bar just because you're not paying.
It's a little absurd, to say the least. I mean,
yeah,
you've said it before, and I will reiterate and agree with you that it is a great system for learning, but there are some serious downfalls.
Yeah. One of the ones that I wanted to add in that I know you've got a gripe with too, and it's actually, I think, one of the reasons I burnt out in 2019 and shut it off, is the leaderboard system.
Yeah.
So Duolingo has a weekly leaderboard. So you're put into like a cohort of learners, and it can be across all languages. They're not all in the same language bucket as you. Everybody's learning their own thing, but the great equalizer across all languages is that you're competing on how much XP you gather in that week, essentially, and you get XP by doing lessons successfully. So the people who do the most, the Tristans of the world, they are high on the leaderboard. And but I mean, you've experienced this too, dude. Like, people go way harder than we do on this silly little game, and they rack up tremendous XP each week to be at the top of the leaderboard. And what towed me along, and what tows a person along in this leaderboard, is you go from Bronze League to Silver League to Gold to some gemstone to the next gemstone, all the way up until, you go past Pearl and Obsidian, and you get to Diamond, of course, at the tippity top. And it gets hard to get to the next rung. Every week you essentially have to be in the top 7 to move up a rung. If you're in the bottom 5 or 7, or 10, I don't know what the number is, but you get bumped down a rung. And if you're in the middle chunk, you stay the same rung. And so in 2019, I was trying so hard to get number 1 in Diamond so that I never had to think about it again. And it was just so irritating because I was not learning anymore. I was focused on the gamification can undermine a system. Like, you are aiming for a metric that is tied to learning, but you can find the way that's like least resistant to get that metric up. And so I was trying to find the best and easiest way to get XP in order to get to the tippity top of a leaderboard, just so I could get it out of my mind. And in the end, I shelved the app back then for that reason, or that was a key reason. And then when I picked it up again, I was faced with the same thing. They kept me up in diamond for the leaderboard thing, and I'm like, no. Now it's still front of mind. And so what I did was I just like completely, I think I had a super Duolingo trial, and I just completely obliterated a leaderboard as quickly as I could by just obsessively doing little lessons. And then I think we both ended up in the situation where we finally gave up, quote unquote, gave up, but we finally let go of, is probably a better phrase, of the silly leaderboard. And I mean, what happened to our enjoyment of the learning process?
Oh, I am looking forward to doing it every day now.
Yeah, because there's no, like, I mean, a whole competition discussion could be, on the horizon one day, because like there's definitely pros and cons to it. But in this situation, it's just not the place for it. Like, like I said before, right?
It's just not fun. It's not what is it? Congruent? Conducive? Well, it's both of those, I think. It's not conducive
it is both.
to a
You're
learning
totally
environment.
Right. Yeah, it's not congruent with or conducive to. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like you're just trying to get XP. You're not really caring about the learning. You're just trying to get to the tippity top of a list of names. Yeah. Whereas once we let it go, we were like, that's probably around when you started taking notes. Now all of a sudden we're actually trying to learn Japanese.
And for anybody curious, once you get to diamond, there's nothing past that. It's literally just diamond. Literally all there is bragging rights.
Yeah, and I mean, who's gonna brag about that? Like, I'm certainly not. I'm a bit of an achievement hunter in games, but only certain games.
Yeah, same here.
Certain games, I'm just like, damn, I want to get all of these achievements, and I do really enjoy achievement hunting in Duolingo, but that was one set of achievements that I wasn't stoked to get. But once I checked the box and got the achievement, I could kind of let it go. That's the only thing that's available at the top of Diamond, guys, is one or two achievements that you need to get there to get. But like, who cares? Like, we're there to learn Japanese, right?
Yeah, I did that same thing that you did too, though. I was like just gung-ho to do lessons, not for the sake of learning, but just to say, oh, yay, I finally moved forward on the leaderboard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the wrong motivation. And it's so cool to hear you say that once you let it go, you were much more excited to open the app and actually learn.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to do, especially if you go into it. If you're listening to this and you have been wanting to go into learning something on Duolingo, just go in to learn. Don't. It's legitimately not a race.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I remind myself of that every day, even with even with you blowing past where I am. Like, anytime we compare where we are in the lessons, I'm just like, I'm so impressed. And I'm doing that low ego thing of like, it's not a race. Like, he's where he is. He's got his notes. He's like learning it, which is so cool, because when you do get to Japan, my friend, you are going to be saying a lot more than oishi to to the waiters. So that's so cool. And then you just, as a learner, as an individual, you have to be like, okay, my friend is way past where I am, and that is okay, because now I can ask him questions if I've got them. I'm going to learn at my own rate. Even if that, like, for me, that is, and maybe I'm giving myself too many excuses here, but for me, sometimes all I've got in the tank, most days, all I've got in the tank is one katakana lesson, like I said, and I try not to beat myself up about that, because I'm still kind of keeping that streak alive, and I'm still learning
some learning. Yeah,
exactly. So I would like to turn up the heat a little bit on it and learn a little bit more deeply. And I think step one of that is to just finally go back to doing lessons rather than because I've quote unquote mastered the game's hiragana katakana things, so I should take that as a sign to only do those if I really am in a time crunch and really do just need to quickly get
those
the
are
check
the shortest
in the box.
ones.
They are, yeah. No HP, no
No
HP
HP.
cost.
You're
Yeah.
not getting chastised for getting it wrong.
Yeah, but yeah, and so all of those negatives said, I do really enjoy. Like Duolingo has a great interface, a great enough interface. I've not played with the desktop browser version like you have, but it from the screenshots you sent me, it seems like just as nice to use. And this isn't meant to be some kind of Duolingo ad, but I just wanted to like also say that it is a fun way to get into language learning and to keep it going, like to keep the streak going. I think are really enjoyable reasons to give it a go if people are looking for a low barrier to entry way to start learning a language like Japanese.
Bringing it back to being in Japan,
Yeah.
it that is a big kind of what if for me on learning all this. Like, I think I've told you this before in private, and I've definitely told your partner before in private. Like, I want to go, but I don't want to go until I'm able to wholeheartedly tell people they're like, "Hey, sorry for being another very possibly annoying drop in this never-ending ocean of tourists." Because tourism in Japan right now, it's booming.
Yeah.
Like, it is just going crazy over there at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. That was definitely present. When we were there, the places we visited, you could see a lot of internal and external tourism, depending on what we were visiting. Like, there was definitely shrines and stuff where you could see. Actually, we saw a lot of like school field trips as well, which was kind of cool. But you could see locals that aren't as local as this attraction coming in to sort of visit a shrine or destination or what have you, which was neat. But yeah, you're totally right. Like tons of people like myself coming to be a tourist and check out. I mean, they've got such amazing stuff.
They
It pulls
do.
us from far and wide. Yeah.
It's not that I can blame anybody for wanting to go. That's like a big experience to have.
Yeah, totally. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you want, factors such as more fluency in Japanese so that you can be, I hate to use the phrase less of a burden, but that's kind of what you're alluding to, right? Like you're basically saying like, hey, I'm here, I'm, from overseas, but like I can kind of interact a little bit more
Proficiently.
yeah, that's better. Proficiently, I like that. I was going to say flowily, which is not a word. I can barely speak English. That's cool. As long as as long as it doesn't keep you from going, that would be the only caveat I say. Like as long as, because that could be a goalpost that never comes, right? Like you could constantly be pushing that goalpost away. But I don't think that makes it a bad goal to have. I think that's wicked. Because I definitely felt like a tourist. I didn't have that kind of fluency. I was the guy, like I told you at the beginning of the story or of the pod, using Google Translate to converse with a couple individuals. So it's definitely a cool goal to have to be able to avoid something like that here and there, and only rely on it when you really have to. But I'd like to throw that caveat out for you or anyone listening to have a goal like that is incredible, as long as it's not a goalpost that keeps moving and keeps you from going. Because my experience of going, gosh, you would love it, man. Or you will love it, I'd like to say.
Should the stars align, yeah.
Yeah,
I already
exactly.
know I'm gonna love it there. There's things I want to do. I want to do the very touristy things, like go to an arcade, go to Akihabara, go to the Godzilla Museum. That's the huge one for me. But I also just I genuinely do want to go to like the countryside and take in the views and the scenery and the quiet.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think we did a good mix of that. I think it's funny. When I go back, because I definitely fully intend to go back, I want more of both of those things. So we aimed for a mix of tourist attractions and like the big stuff that you want to see, and a lot more, and I guess a lot of this can still fall into tourism, but like a lot more of the quieter places and shrines and stuff like that, though a lot of the shrines are big tourist destinations themselves. But we tried to get a mix, and I think we really succeeded. But when I return, I would like to hit, we didn't go with a huge set itinerary, which is something I love when I'm traveling, is to have less of an itinerary and to just kind of like figure it out as you go. But I've done both. Having an itinerary for a few big items is super important. And so I think we hit that balance really, really well this trip. But going back again, I think I would have, now that I've had the chill experience, I would try to have a couple more specific destinations, like, you know, Godzilla Museum, or like we didn't get to the Ghibli Museum, which I understand might be a good thing because I think they're expanding it and trying to build like a cool outdoor section that we would have missed had we gone anyway. So there's things, really cool things like that we didn't see that I would love to go back and see. And then on the other hand, what you just said about seeing the quiet and the countryside and experiencing more of the culture itself rather than just the tourism stuff, we did a little bit of, but we could totally do more. And again, now that we've familiarized ourselves with what it's like to be over there, I would 100% add more of those experiences in terms of just being able to visit somewhere a little more rural, a little more out of the way, have more cultural experiences. Like we didn't do the onsens, like we didn't do any bathhouse kind of experiences, stuff that we just kind of kept it really tame and didn't experience certain things. And I think to your point, between now and then, learning a little bit more Japanese and such would be a powerful way to get more comfortable to go out of the big touristy areas.
I did make the joke earlier about how like I want to play in Japanese lobbies because they're far more politer than, you know, the Western ones.
Yeah, but how cool would that be?
It'd be so awesome.
Yeah, and being able to like understand VTubers and stuff too. Mm-hmm. Like I know we had talked about that with other languages as well outside of Japanese. I know that you've been dipping your toes into some other stuff as well.
Oh yeah, I have. Who wants to be monolinguistic when you can be trilinguistic?
Yeah, a polyglot, they call that.
Yep. For anyone who's curious, I'm alluding to the fact that I'm also learning Indonesian on the side.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I've heard, I can't remember if we talked about this actually, man. I've heard that the more languages you learn, the quote unquote easier it gets. I'm sure that there's a bit of a caveat to that, but I think the idea is basically that, like, I mean, whether your brain has adaptations for it or if it's really just like, it's probably your brain has adaptations for it, your systems for learning languages improve, like you learn you and your learning style better. But also I think that you just have, you have more to connect things to. I believe, I can't remember if I brought this up in, actually, I think I brought this up in the manga episode, the fact that Tim Ferriss has learned multiple languages, and he did so using One Piece, which is relevant to this podcast, right? And I think that just to tie up that idea of learning multiple languages, I think there's power to like learning a language. And then when you go to learn another language, you can actually relate what you're learning, whatever content you're learning there, whether you use manga to do it or not, you can relate the Indonesian word for excuse me to sumimasen, right? Mm-hmm. You can start to make those connections, not just connecting Indonesian back to English, but you can actually make those connections between it and Japanese as well. Same with like writing systems and stuff. They're going to be completely different, but you're going to be like, oh, I was learning, you know, I know this set of letters in English, and I know this sound in Japanese, and it's kind of like this sound in Indonesian, and learning is all about making connections. And so I think that you've got more to connect to when you start layering additional languages on top.
You do. And to touch back on your point, I have definitely heard people who know multiple languages say, like, if you know more than two, you're not going to be thinking in just one or two languages. You're going to be thinking Like, you'll think one thing in English. If you say you know Spanish, you'll think the other half of it in Spanish. If you think, oh, I want a sandwich, you'll probably think it in French if you know French. Just stuff like that.
Such an interesting idea, and that's something that I haven't obviously had happen. I've barely scratched the surface on this, but it's a cool idea, you know.
I'm kind of proud of myself because the other day I was just having an imaginary conversation with random people in my head, and I managed to have a whole conversation about like what their favorite sweet drinks are
in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So
yeah, you're making leaps and bounds here, man.
Yeah, that one little moment was it was very gratifying, even if it was all imaginary.
The next step. Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I was going to say. And have we talked about there are services, probably free and paid, but certainly there would be free ones, where you can actually connect to a native speaker of your target language and just schedule a call with them. And,
are there?
Yeah. I've obviously not dipped my toes in it, but like, you know, when you get a little further along, you could actually connect with a native Japanese speaker and basically test your ability to converse with them at your level. Yeah, definitely something to consider.
Yeah, I'm keeping that in the vault for sure. That sounds awesome.
Such a neat idea, and it could be like, I definitely know that there's paid services for that connect you to somebody, but I think that there's free ones as well. And I mean, it'd be perfect if you knew somebody who spoke Japanese. You could just pick their brain, but I mean, hard to come by, right? So something really neat that you did a few weeks back, I only jumped in on one of them, but I know you did it more than once, was a Japanese learning stream.
Yeah.
That was really cool when you did that. You just streamed your Duolingo practice, essentially, and talked about your notes and stuff like that, which was really cool. It was like a study with me kind of session. That was really cool.
Yeah, I've done a few of them now because it gives me a great excuse to actually speak out loud verbally all the stuff that I'm learning, which any excuse you can have to do that, I highly recommend taking because it makes everything so much different.
Yeah, that's something that because I'm just like banging off the lessons really quickly. Sometimes I'm on break at work or whatever. I'm not really, just the way I've been going about practice, I haven't been carving out the time and effort to actually slow down and say things out loud. Like, there's a couple opportunities, but I think you're totally right, man. Like, if you actually make those opportunities and actually try, and again, this might go back to me just going and doing the actual lessons, not just the katakana lessons, but like to actually take the phrases you're learning and actually say them out loud is going to make you better at pronunciation. Like, that's the whole point, right? Like, reading signs is cool, but the whole point is to be able to say things to and understand things from actual speakers of Japanese. So that's a huge power tip to just to have in your case a stream where you're forcing an excuse to actually say these things out loud. It makes sense that you can say whole phrases now.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge confidence booster for sure.
Do you think you'll do more of the streams? Like, should we link up the streams in the description of this episode?
Yeah, I actually did one last week before I had to quit it due to, the technical difficulties that resulted in us taking a quick break from recording today.
Oh, shoot.
But now that I will no longer face that issue, I think I can safely say they will be more frequent.
That's awesome. I should definitely jump in with you on those as a viewer. Like, I should be sitting down and studying a little bit harder because it's cool to see how far you've come. Like, when you say a couple things that you've said in this episode, and it sure would be just to circle back to actually being in Japan and experiencing the language. Like I said, it's totally possible to get by without, but I like your idea of having more. And while I was there, I was grateful for what little I had learned. I was like, man, this is so much better than zero. But the whole time I was like, I want more, which gives you like a cool thing to strive towards, right?
One of the big key things I can say from what I've been doing so far is it is totally okay to just sound out everything that you're saying. Like I know it's a very fast language, but at the same time, we're not natives. We don't have like we can speak as fast and read as fast with English as we want because that's what we know. But with this one, it's very easy to just take your time with it.
That's an awesome tip. Have you heard the phrase slow is smooth, smooth is fast?
I probably have heard a version of it.
Yeah, right? And like I feel like that ties into what you're saying, that like, taking your time to sound things out properly is going to lead to accuracy, right? And smoothness down the line. Like, why would I want to say something really fast if I'm saying it totally wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's an awesome power tip.
But then there is that completionist node in the brain that says, "Oh, I want to be able to say this fast, so I just do it anyway," because they do it in all the Japanese stuff I watch.
That's cool though, because like I think you could come at it from both angles almost. You can like slow things down and get it right so that it sticks, and then you can try your hand at saying something at full speed, like get reps at both ends, right? That's cool. That actually, you reminded me of something that I wanted to bring up way earlier in this episode, which was you were talking about how like when you read something in your lessons, you'll kind of know this piece and that piece, and you'll almost make your first guess like almost quickly based on those pieces. You're kind of alluding to this idea, and it reminded me of something that I've been thinking about lately in terms of learning, which is this idea that it ties into the slow idea, where to develop like true accuracy, we're going to want to slow down, think our way through it. What is truly the right answer, which is kind of you reflecting into your notes and then submitting your answer in the lesson and getting it right or wrong and figuring out what the actual correct thing is. But I think there is actually a power there when it comes to like reading something fast. I've been doing it a lot in my lessons actually, where I will kind of like look at something really fast and almost assume what it says. Like I'm trying to read katakana, for example, really quickly, and I will be inaccurate when I'm going fast. Like I'll be inaccurate as to, what sound is this symbol? What sound is that symbol? I will have a level of inaccuracy if I don't slow way down to get it right. And so on one end of the spectrum, I think you should slow down to get it totally right, and learn deeply and accurately. However, going fast, I think, is also really cool, not only in the pronunciation like we were just talking about, but also in terms of reading, where it's just like I want my brain to be able to recognize it quickly, so I'm going to try to think it quickly and then come back, and if I get it wrong, then I'm going to slow down and try to get it right. But there's something about quick recall that seems to be happening when I do that, where I'm just like, oh, if I'm trying to recognize what this means really fast, my brain tries to process it fast. Sometimes it gets it really wrong, and sometimes it kind of gets it right. And I think that that's all progress, kind of similar to what we were just talking about in terms of pronunciation. It's like work on things slow and smooth, and it'll get fast. But on the other hand, do a couple reps really quickly. If your brain is recognizing a phrase as a whole, like you're reading these symbols and you recognize almost the shape of the word or the shape of the phrase as a picture, you know what I mean? That's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's getting closer to what we currently actually do in our native language of English. Right now, we don't have to read every letter or syllable of a word. We recognize the word as a picture all at once, and then we recognize a whole sentence really fast, right? So anyway, I think that's cool double-ended way to come at it. Slow and smooth, but also starting to pick things up fast, both in terms of reading and in terms of pronunciation. Slow down, speed up, just kind of hit it from multiple angles. It's more fun.
It is. And you'll feel like you're not getting any results from doing that, but trust me, after like 2 or 3 months, you'll definitely notice a huge change.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's where, like, that's where the streak really is the reason I recommend Duolingo is like, that's where you're just getting reps in, like you're actually coming back to the lessons, you're getting reps in. You've got that routine that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Embedded in your day to day. And I think that's where the power is.
Although one hilarious anecdote to top that all off, there is one word in katakana that I can recognize in the wild at any given time.
What is it?
Karaoke.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not even kidding.
You just see it. I've got that. That's hilarious. I've got that with ramen now. Because, I noticed that in Japan, ramen signs were almost always in katakana, right? So that's so funny. Karaoke.
Yeah, I'll be watching my my little walking videos, and they'll pass by a karaoke bar, and I'll do the Leo pointing meme. Go, oh, I know that.
That's so good. That's awesome. What do you want to just to finish off? I wanted to ask you about these walking videos. I know you brought them up to me like months ago, but these are videos. This is just like footage people will take of like walking through parts of Japan. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like a little first-person view of somebody just taking a stroll through any area in Japan, and they just, they silently film the walk.
That's awesome. Like, that's got to be just pleasant to watch, and what a cool content idea of just like taking us on the walk. Yeah.
Hilariously, that's how I kind of can piece together like what the flavor of the month is. Like, when you guys went, I was watching all those videos, and I could tell immediately that the flavor of the month was Tokyo Revengers.
Oh yeah, and that's so true. I can confirm that. Like everywhere we went, there was tons of Tokyo Revengers. There was a couple other things that were big. Gosh, you know what my biggest regret is when it comes to like stuff is Blue Lock was really big, and you guys have now heard me rant about Blue Lock a little bit, and that was like one of my anime of the year last year, I would say. Like, it just hit me so hard. It was huge when I was there, and I was just like, I don't need any of this Blue Lock stuff. Haikyuu is where my head's at. Oh, regret. But yeah, you're so right. You're right. Like, tons of Tokyo Revengers. That's so funny you say that.
Have you watched any of that?
No, that.
Neither
and
have I.
In fact, really, you haven't? Oh shit, would be nice to know if it's as awesome as it must be. Like, that's what I did when I was there, and I saw that it was everywhere. I took it as a sign, like, okay, I should probably check this out.
I know the plot to a degree. Oh, well, I know like one element from the plot, and that's it. And it sounds so weird from what I've seen, because it sounds, well, when I say that, I mean it sounds so weird because everything I've seen is different from what it's supposed to be.
And yet it's seemingly super popular. Yeah. Yeah, it's on the watch list. Anyway, and you know what's so funny? Just to end this on an anime note, we got through a whole episode. You guys listened to anyone still with us listened to a whole episode about learning Japanese and going to Japan to use it, and we went through the whole episode, Tristan, without bringing up how we'd like to watch anime without subtitles.
Or how we use anime to learn basic Japanese.
Yeah. And like, I mean, if we want to touch on it quickly now, like I would say that this whole... Actually, here's a question for you. Would you say that your studying has allowed you to actually recognize more when you are watching anime in Japanese?
Oh, yeah. I'll hear some... Like, I can... So, real quick, I've showed this to you, but I'm going to bring it up real quick. This N1 to N5 summary of linguistics.
Yes.
So, for anybody curious, N1 to N5. N1 means you are the top of the mountain. You understand everything of the language you're learning, even reading it. You know it all. N5 is you're still in kindergarten, basically.
Nice.
And I think I told Tyler this when I'm feeling very confident, I feel like I'm somewhere in N4, bordering N3, which is kind of like middle of the road. So on those good nights when I'm watching anime and I hear words that I recognize, but the subtitles feel weird, I can kind of piece together what the actual conversation is about.
That's awesome. Like, that's progress right there.
Yeah, not to an insane degree, but just enough that I'm like, oh, I think this is actually what they meant, or this is
That's
the
cool.
direction that conversation was going.
Yeah, that's so neat. And I can totally see it. Like, I am definitely in some kind of kindergarten level. and I even recognize the occasional this or that thing, which is super encouraging, because you're just like, oh, hey, you know, it's every weeb who tries to learn Japanese wants to be able to watch anime without subtitles.
Yeah.
And it is such a stereotypical, but honestly really cool goal. And so anytime I recognize a little something like that, it's a little pat on the back. So I bet with your study you've definitely recognized more and more, which is just cool. Well on our way to getting there eventually.
Yeah, we'll be able to finally be a part of the story even more.
Or to even be able to read this Demon Slayer box set that I got in Japanese. That'd be neat.
That would be so sick, actually. There's your top of the mountain goal.
Yeah, totally. Be able to speak it when we go back over there, be able to read it if we want to check it out in manga form, or be able to hear it and understand it in audio form on watching anime episodes in general. And it's just cool for your brain, man. That's where my head's at. Those are all good goals, but I'm just enjoying having another way to flex my neurons. So thanks for sticking around with us, and if anybody's into it, go learn some Japanese, and also tell us if Tokyo Revengers is awesome.
Especially Tokyo Revengers. That's more important.
We want to know.
We really do.
Catch you later, everybody.